evening. Welcome to the Laughing Monkey Music Show. Taylor by Mike Tramp. How are you?
How's it going?
Good, good, good. I'm glad we could do this. Been a big fan for a
Uh,
long time. Um, you were so prolific. Right now we're promoting the songs of White Lion. But I mean, geez, I've been hearing music from you since I've been, I don't know, 16. And you're not slowing down. It's incredible.
well, I mean, I can't say that this was the plan, or that there ever was a plan. You know, you start your journey, you jump on the train, and it goes places you hadn't expected, and during the time, sometimes you get thrown back, and you get back up, and you move on, and things like that. I think that back in the '80s when we started tasting the success with White Lion, there might be a moment there where we think this is going to be like this forever.
You'd started prior, like before White Lion, you had like a couple albums out, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's I started already in the music business when I was 15 and a half. Well unprepared. So from the beginning, they just became learning steps. I think the difference between me and maybe somebody else who had a similar plan was just I made my learning steps and on stage in front
Yeah.
of the camera, so it was all sort of documented, and there was no running away from it. And of course now that I look back, I see the pattern all the way, and just that I had so much energy and so much will to pursue this journey.
Mhm.
I wasn't always ready when I got to the different places that I got to, and maybe somehow what I've been doing since after White Line is maybe correct or redo a few things that I got into too early.
Right. But looking at you now, like looking back, I mean, when I first heard you, it was White Lion, and as we're talking, your music's changed over the years and stuff. And it used to be like, for me, I hear wait, wait, it'd be the song and rocking out. Now, if I say wait, wait, I'm trying to slow down my grandson from running away from me. Dynamics have changed a lot as I gotten older. But if you look at your whole life musically, you are a journeyman musically. All the projects you've done, you haven't stopped. You're a songwriter to the core.
Well,
You
yeah, I
aren't like a
mean,
rock star. You know what I'm saying? Like that rock star minute that people know you as. You're far deeper than
yeah,
that.
yeah. I mean, the rock star role is a role that I'm not very good at playing. Um, I feel that I'm very good at being on stage. I'm very good at doing the show, and what I did in White Line, I think I did good. But sort of, the rock star, persona is more someone who in reality sort of just stays in their life one place, keep the
Hmm.
sunglasses on, do their hair and stuff like that. But most people, especially because nobody in the '80s cared about where you came from or if you had any sort of musical upbringing or what's your natural roots. It's just really a matter of if where you were at that moment, how big you were on MTV.
Yeah.
But ever since I was 8, 9 years old, I've been sitting with an acoustic guitar, watching the hippies of Copenhagen sort of imitate Dylan and Neil Young and Crosby, Stills, Nash, that all that kind of stuff. So my true background is 100% folk. Um, and by the time I came to America and I started meeting Vito, regardless if my dream sort of were Van Halen, when Vito and I wrote songs together, I would be sitting with my acoustic guitar, and he'd be sitting with a Strat on the other side, and I'll throw my own version of "Blowing in the Wind" to the table, and he would add larger chords and stuff like that, but the melody remained the same.
Yeah.
And most White Lions foundation of melodies and songwriting comes from that point first, and then it becomes it's put into the White Line or the '80s machine, the sound of the snare drum, the guitars, etc., etc., etc. But I proved it to be true that once I started touring like 2013 in America, where I just traveled around with acoustic guitar, now people could hear that these songs could easily
Yeah.
stand on their own with just some guy who's just strumming, not even finger picking, but just basically strumming along the song and people singing along. And that has never changed for me. And it's not about to change.
And I was going to say, actually, that's a perfect example of White Line to me sounded like Van Halen with Crosby, Stills, and Nash and Young, because at the time I was going to concerts. I was a White Line fan. I would see Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and then the next week I'd see Van Halen in town. I liked a
Yeah.
lot of types of music, so to me, you guys were the perfect mixture of a young teen with the guitar and the songs, because your lyrics were way different than anybody else. You know,
But it's tough to say, unfortunately, because I wouldn't change anything that happened in the 80s because it happened
oh,
because it needed to happen. But Vito and I talked about it many, many times, how at some times, we thought we were getting caught up in both an image and some sort of category
yeah,
that we couldn't really sustain because we had different messages. If it was possible to have different messages in the 80s when you were hopping around on MTV,
right.
the
It was
songs the
different.
songs the songs today, when of course now that we're talking about this album, and I know we're going to get to it, obviously is the true proof that with a little bit of modern edge and a refreshment, but still staying as true to the original version. Again, you are not saying these songs are cheesy today.
Yeah. Well, the lyrics hold. I mean, half the album talks about emotions, people's rights, war, standing up for yourself. Not a lot of bands were saying that back then,
No.
and I think it's probably confusing because you look one way, but your message was totally different. And even the songs that were ballads were about, we the children cry, or they're about love or loss or inspirational. You will find happiness again. It wasn't, it was always just a little bit different, a little bit to the right. And I don't even think a record label or somebody could have even put you in a pocket to produce. You know what I'm saying? I don't know how they would have put you out there any differently.
No, no.
Because
I mean, and you know what? Nobody cared. Nobody. It. But that's fine because people in the long run cared. Um, Nobody ever brought it up in interviews. When we did interviews in the 80s, Circus Magazine, Hit Parader, Metal Edge, Rip Magazine, it wasn't a serious interview. Nobody really
right,
wanted to get a deep answer. Nobody wanted you to preach from the stage. Nobody wanted to preach from the radio station. I mean, David Lee Roth has sort of opened that door. And I mean, I was fascinated by that door about totally entertainment without really having a point.
right.
But
Well, that's
just
good.
like right at the moment is where it's at. It doesn't really matter what's going on, but at the moment is what we're doing the stuff. And being from Europe and being raised with an enormous awareness, both in school, in daily life, about the entire world. Me coming to America in '82, David Letterman had just started, MTV had just started. It was exploding. There was so much positive energy. And nobody wanted to hear about nuclear reactors or apartheid and things like that. And this is what I brought along with me from Denmark, not to be used, but just because I had grown up with it and
Right.
I'd seen it on a daily basis, both in school and on TV and in youth club. We were very much aware of that, regardless if we were playing music and playing sports and stuff like that. We were very much aware that there's a big world out there and there's many places people are not doing well.
Much more socially conscious than we were back in the 80s. Denmark already was. A lot of the country was. I mean, it was a fun time. We were young. It's fun. And most music doesn't always age out the same. But as we're talking about this, we'll actually start jumping into the album itself. These songs hold together lyrically. And as you I don't know, we say you're reimagining it. To me, it doesn't feel like reimagine it. It really feels like you have a really good pair of jeans and you wear them all the time and you love them. It gets more comfortable and it feels even better. That's kind of what it feels like to me because this doesn't feel like reimagined to me. It's already been imagined. It just
Yeah, no,
feels like
no,
it feels like road worn, but like in a
yeah,
good way,
yeah, yeah.
and it feels like almost like you fleshed out the songs even more than you already had. You know,
Yeah,
um,
but the thing is, what you're getting at is basically, I mean, one thing is that you were talking about the songs and how to, but that's basically how I feel both as an artist and as a person. I'm road worn right now, and I'm comfortable, and I'm sitting sort of exactly what I want to see. I mean, if I could ask, God for another 20 years of where I am right now, that's what I would do. But I don't wish to be 27 in this world and stuff like that.
oh
I
God,
love
no,
knowledge. I love everything that I've seen. I love that I'm able to say to myself, you are who you are, and you are not going to try to be anybody else. Because a lot of and I don't mean to jump, and you might even have the question. The thing
I have
about
no.
me doing these songs and doing this album, because I'm going out to tour with those songs, is that I want to be up there and representing both my age and where I am today, because I'm not 22nd at
Yeah,
26. I'm
yeah,
actually 62, and that both needs to be represented in your persona, in your your expression, but also in how you are as a singer.
well, I think it's about you being true to yourself. I mean, and we'll skip in. We'll go through some of the songs, but I'll be honest with you. The Love Don't Come Easy, the reworking of this, and not rework, whatever the way, probably more towards the original. It sounds definitely more along the lines of like a Tom Petty song. And not that you're copying Tom Petty. I can actually hear Tom Petty. I love Tom Petty. Could have done a cover of that song. Like it would have felt right in that genre of honest, I don't know, they call it Americana, folky rock, like you're saying before. It feels very earthy and very organic and relatable to almost anybody, you know.
Well, I mean that's just the truth, because I mean the ingredients are from those kind of things. I mean, even though Vito, of course, admired Eddie Van Halen and stuff like that, and there's a lot of people saying, oh, there's a couple of things I did. When you listen to Vito as a songwriter and as a guitar player, there's not no Van Halen in it, because
Right.
Vito is non-blues oriented. He's completely, and both Vito and I loved, I mean, loved Tom Petty. We loved Springsteen, loved Neil
Right.
Young, loved Elton John. I mean, we all, but we also loved Journey and Foreigner and Kansas and
Right.
Cheap Trick. I mean, we love great songs.
Well, that's what it is. Good. A good song is a good song. We still sing Kansas. You can make jokes about that or a Blue Oyster Cult. A good song, you're still going to hear it 40, 50 years later, you know?
Exactly.
So, I mean, and that's how it holds up. But this album, though, I mean, like, you Cry for Freedom right now. That's actually the single right now, isn't it? Or
Yeah.
sort of your push.
Yeah.
I mean, how much more relatable could that be within this world? I mean, at the time, it's.
Exactly.
I mean, are you getting feedback from people on this album about certain songs now resonating differently that
Well,
weren't
I mean,
aware of you as a solo
yeah,
artist?
I mean, it's still very fresh, because we're sort of only about 2 weeks into me now starting hearing feedback and talking to people. But the thing that I can say is it's unanimous in people's response to it. There's nobody that's confused. Everybody's very clear on what they hear, and that to me is exactly what the point is, because there's nothing new in this. It's just presented today, and it's great to both. I mean, Little Fighter and Cry for Freedom and When the Children Cry,
Yeah.
are songs that are written for today. I wrote When the Children Cry in 1985. Ronald Reagan was president. MTV was at its peak. People were rolling in money. Everybody was sort of happy. Rock and roll was at its peak. America was stronger than ever, and nobody was confused if the cat was black or white or yellow or whatever. And here I am sitting in my manager's house in Staten Island with my acoustic guitar, writing, a song saying, "No more presidents and all the wars will end."
Well, it was pretty heavy back then too, and kind of these songs though. Even the rework like "Going Home Tonight" really feels like it could still be. It actually could be like a contemporary, more of a like a country contemporary song nowadays.
Well, of course, of course. Well, modern day country took a
It's
lot
totally
from
different.
rock and roll, man.
I mean, we can all point back to like Mutt Lange with Def Leppard, Shania Twain, and the whole
Without a doubt,
tying in.
without a doubt.
That's an easy one to will, but it's not that it's a bad thing, but I very much
No,
hear
no,
it and going through these songs. I kind of hope as we talk about this album because this album is out on the April 14th. Obviously I got a preview of it. It's the whole thing's a good solid album, and it goes through all the hits: "Lady of the Valley," "Fighter." I'll go through the list from 3 point now. "Broken Heart," which I'm glad it keeps coming back because I know you had it on the first album, and then you guys reworked it, the fourth album, and I'm glad it still has a good shelf life now. "Let Them Come Easy," "Hungry," "Cry for Freedom," "Going Home Tonight," "Wait," of course. All the Fallen is one of my personal favorites. I love that song. I'm glad it made it to this. Uh, "Living on the Edge" is a good choice for this album, and "Tell Me," and then "When the Children Cry," but you do that with piano, which is great. I mean, I know you don't want to redo the same thing you had.
No, I'm glad you
Uh,
said that.
well, I'd heard that before. And I want to say this before I ask you a question is, and I'm hoping because as we talked before earlier, big fan of your soul stuff, and so obviously I'm 52, so love rock. I still do. But there's one other time it was Capricorn came out, and I heard "Have You Ever?" Holy Toledo, that song just gives me the chills to this day. And that's when I knew
Wow.
you were the real deal, like as a songwriter. It's like this guy is not just didn't write just a bunch of good songs with you and Vito something like a Flash. That was it. And I was in for you as a solo artist. And to this day, I probably listen to more solo albums of yours, music just streaming, but then I do probably White Line, and I love White Line, but I relate more to your solo stuff and the power of what it is because it's as you age in life, you're a different person. It's a
Yeah, no, I
snapshot,
mean, yeah, I
and
mean,
your music is aging with me. In a very positive way, and that's akin to your
it
life.
would it would simply be impossible for me to sit down and write a song which would fit on a White Lion album. Uh, you know, you mentioned Capricorn that comes out in 97, my first solo album, and where from the beginning there are no cross messages. I instantly lay on the table, this is how I sound. There's a classic lineup, two guitars, Hammond B3, piano, bass, and drums, and that has been like that on all my solo albums. That's who my Tramp is as a solo artist. It's just a continuation. It is as consistent as AC/DC is in AC/DC's way. I'm not trying to do anything new. I'm just telling a continuously a story that goes on. And with that, and it's actually for the listener, this actually has been the biggest problem for me because already when I did my first US tour in 2001, playing on the Capricorn album, I showed up at many venues and they had announced White Lion.
Right.
And I got to just tell you how hard it was for me to go on stage with all my hair cut off, a Telecaster around my neck, and people expecting Hungry and Wait.
I wouldn't
And
even know how to do that.
that has followed me. That has followed me since that no matter what interview, no matter what record I do and stuff like that, a large amount of the article will be about my Tramp from White Lion. Every poster since that day has either said the voice of White Lion, the dude from White Lion, you know him from White Lion, etc., etc. And then when we came into this sort of like 2014, 15s, as I started touring heavily in Europe with the band of brothers, my own E Street Heartbreakers band, promoters would get, oh, man, can you play a couple White Lion songs, film them in the rehearsal studio, stuff like that. and I was so against it. But then I put it in. But then I realized the guitar player that I have in my band, besides myself, has been picked because he would never fit in the 80s. He doesn't play solos like that. So
Right,
now I go out and do new versions of White Lion. Now it's Neil Young interpreting White Lion,
right.
and that's not what the people want to hear. So finally, when I get to this point, I'm just saying, you know what? If if that is my call, I mean, obviously these are my song. If that's my call, then let me go out and do it the proper way.
Right.
And that's why the album is called Songs of White Line, because it's basically a concert poster. So you're not confused when you look at that poster. You know what he's going to play.
I'm glad we talked about that. I want to it's good important to clear it up because you are. I mean, White Line became a brand, and it does fill seats, and people will know White Line will go there. Oh, that one song, because you know how people are more pedestrian about music are not going to know. You know, my Tramp's up, but oh, I know that one song from White Lion, and it brings people in. But unfortunately, as an artist, you can't like close that door and move on and build. You know, you've been more solo stuff, and you've been in White Lion in your life. You know, and those are your songs, but you have I don't know, you get seven, eight. I mean, how many solo albums do you have at this point? Not including
12,
your 12. Okay,
12.
yeah, your soul stuff, and it's like you have so much music out there that's so fantastic. You know, I couldn't imagine having how daunting it would be to start solo and then have people want all the White Line stuff when you're like, I'm trying to do something different. You know,
You know what? I would. There are times when I'm sort of in between finishing a tour and been promoting an album and stuff like that. Then there's this middle earth where you just kind of just sitting and 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 you ask yourself, why am I gonna do another album? Because it's not like I have a big record company who's really just dying to release another album because money is pouring in. It's not like I have the world screaming at me. We simply can't wait for another album. So the album simply just becomes my own expression. Whatever I have in me will end up on the album and things like that. So it's almost the only purpose, besides when then I hear people like you, but even many fans that say to me, and many have said it, we like your solo stuff better. But it's also because now they have family, they're
right,
married and stuff like that. They remember the 80s. They just need to relate to something that is a little more,
right. Current. I mean, it holds up. It's fun to listen to White Line. But like I said, on a day to day thing, your solo stuff is much more relatable. You know, it feels um it's just nice to play, going to work, doing stuff around the house. It's relatable. I think the fact you do it now, and there's no one in your ear, so you have nothing to gain or lose from doing the music. So it's pure honest. It's just you doing exactly what you love and how you feel. So it's not like you're like, oh, I got to write a hit song for money. You're like, my motivation is just because I have to get this out of me, and there's nothing more
yeah,
pure
no,
music than that. That's just it. You know, as
I
an
think, I
artist,
mean, even though this is far from a comparison or competition in any way, there are no one that from the 80s that sort of that not competed with, but we're in the same magazine and etc. etc. That has released 13 solo albums or have been consistent. Everybody has been going in and out of bands, rehashing their old band, trying to do that because nobody has. That is who they are. The thing was that Mike Tramp and White Line, that was just a part of me. But when I was by myself, which obviously I was after White Line and a short run with my band after White Line, Freak of Nature, once it was just Mike Tramp, it needed to be just Mike Tramp, and it
right?
needed to sound like Mike Tramp and stuff like that. And that's who I am as a solo artist.
I think that's good. I think that's one of the things. Like to me, I don't want to talk. I love Vito, but to me, it's not the question. I actually think you should have a virtual tip jar for everybody that interviews you and asks you about the band getting back together again. It has to give you $1 because it will pay for your visa to America, like in 5 interviews. because it's not necessary. It's not people just there's so much out there. It's not going to happen. It's not a thing. I mean, I'm hoping this album, the songs of White Lion, because these are your songs, it's a good album. But I want it to be a catalyst because I've always been a proponent. I've been wanting to talk to you prior to this about your solo stuff, you know. And if a question, go back to even Capricorn. Listen to Have You Ever? If you can't feel the emotion and the power of that, that is going to set the pace for me of all the albums. Now they're not all that same pace or the same, lyrical content. Some are more upbeat, some more like rock and roll. They're all got a little bit different feels to them, and each of your solo albums sound a little bit different. You know, um, and that's what I really want to encourage. I hope this album, as people listen to this, go back and check out the other stuff. You know, that's it. I think, and I want to say, that I think when you did the White Lion, that little bump in the road there, it should have been a White Lion album. It actually should have been a Mike Tramp thing because it was a great album. I just think it got compared against the wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You should have a
I
fair
mean,
shot.
yeah. Those unfortunate the dilemmas. It's like there are the good sides and there's the not so good sides about being part of this business. It's incredible how not well, incredible might be too big of a word, but maybe somehow somebody forgets that I am also a rock fan.
Yeah.
I also have my heroes, and I'm also an author fan. It's like I when I started reading Stephen King as very early on, and even though some of the books later on, I mean, I bought every Stephen King book because I wanted to follow him as an author. I bought every Journey album. I bought
Yep.
every Springsteen album, every Petty album, every Mellencamp album, every Neil Young album, every Dylan. I have every Dylan bootleg. The amount of money Bob Dylan has made just on me, and some of it I'll never get to listen to, but I just decided that it was too big of a part of me. And the same thing goes with Thin Lizzy and stuff like that. But there are never a time during the day, or Queen for that matter, I go, man, I just wish Freddie Mercury came back. I wish Phil
Yeah.
Lynott came back. I just don't live in this unrealistic world. White Lion will, of course, not get back together. We would have done it 20 years ago. Vito has not been in a studio or on a stage since 91.
I
Him
hear
and
you.
I are great friends. We share certain things and we don't go any deeper than that. You know what?
Don't
Since
need
no
to.
one else is going to say it, I don't believe a White Line reunion would be better than the original White Line were back then. We're not that kind of band that should get back together and represent 1988 because the band would not do like I do, which is mature the songs. The bands would go out and try to play them note for note, and I have already changed the keys of these songs to be able to sing them also as a grown man, etc., etc. So there's a lot in stuff like that, and I also don't wish my mom and dad rise from the grave and get back together. That life is done.
Well, I think it's a part of acceptance, and I think I agree with you. I mean, you thank you for sharing that, but that was not a question I was going to ask because I don't think it's. I think it's important that people just can stop with that because I hope this album's going to focus on your collection of work that you've done through the years. And people could. And Freak of Nature is a great band too, but that was a band unit. The solo Mike Tramp stuff I'm just talking about more because talking to you and the body of work that you've created and taking your guitar and traveled for years. That's not a rock star. That's a musician. The traveling working musician that you've done. And a songwriter, and you do it just because you love music, which is different than what other people think. But that album, though, the album you did do without any of that other stuff, it was a good album. Once again, it was a well written album.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, it got beat up for it was compared to something. It wasn't the same thing. It wasn't the same thing. And so
of course it wasn't.
no,
I
I'm
know.
not saying anything as you, but the people are going to compare it, and any guitarist being compared to Vito, it was not going to be fair. You know,
No, no, without a doubt, without a doubt. I mean, it is never meant like that. That thing. I remember that thing started with Randy Rhoads coming in, and Ozzy Osbourne because Van Halen had ruled, or Eddie
yeah,
Van Halen had ruled, for about 6, 7 years. There were no guitar player that even could come close to what he had
No.
sort of taken over, after Blackmore and stuff like that. There was only Eddie. And I remember coming to America in 82 and hearing about Randy Rhoads and Ozzy and stuff like that. And for a moment, it was going to be the new one. When I listened back, I go, not even close in any way, matter of that. But what it became, it was like every band needed, a new guitar player.
Guitar Hero.
And then if the guitar player left, they replaced it with another one. It was always,
Right.
oh man, he's a great guitar, he goes faster. And it was just the same threading, fussed out sound. Nobody was actually adding anything new. It
Right.
was just, it was a bigger thing than it actually was.
It was. And my point with that is, I want to say, like everyone else, I love Vito, but the point is, the guitarists and the players you've had on your album are very top notch. And I think they've kind of gotten a shadow. I'm not gonna say name them all. I probably couldn't. Point is, you've had phenomenal musicians. So I think it's a, misnomer. It's kind of sad because being compared to Vito or being compared to other artists, it's not fair as a musician to begin with, you know.
Of
And
course
I
not.
think all these albums, there's some great guitar work on these albums. If people are into guitar, clearly I am. I think there's some great, guitar stuff on these things. And sometimes it's about the small pieces, the niche things you do, the strumming. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we all, when Marcus Nand, who's a guitar player, a friend of mine from all the way back to '94, we've been talking about this for a while, and I remember back in around 2004 or 5 when I was kind of being lured in to try to do a new version of a White Lion for festivals and stuff like that. And I made a round of phone calls to some of the bigger '80s guitar players. I don't need to mention them, but you know what? Most of them says we're not going to play Vito Bratta. And the thing is, and again, of course, not compared, but you know what? It's almost like a classical piece by Mozart or Beethoven. You can't skip it. Once you start playing that melody, you got to play it all the way.
Right.
And Vito Bratta's guitar parts and solos are, you cannot go into a blues scale halfway through the weight solo. You won't survive. You will never make it. And a lot of these guitar players were sort of like more into playing guitar, but not really into the completely dedication. Says, I
Right.
have to play this song note for
Note for
note.
note.
I can't add myself.
No, not those songs. The thing he created, he came out with a tone. I think that was one of the good things you needed back then too. Vito has his own sound. He had a sound that no one could touch.
Yeah.
But see, it's not just you dealing with it. Was David Lee Roth redoing Van Halen songs now with some guitar player. First off, I would want to be that guitar player redoing Van Halen songs anyhow, because, and I actually heard extra riffs, extra licks on a Van Halen song that they were redoing. I'm like, what are you doing? It's like going to like a museum and painting over a Picasso or something. I'm going to add a little here. I'm going to put a little color here and make it pop. It's like, just leave it alone.
Yeah.
But to that point, you had some great musicians. What is your favorite album of your own now, of your solo stuff? Like, what do you think? For fans, I want people like to listen to you. Like, what do you think would be a good album for them to get into for you?
Yeah, but yeah, you probably, I mean, that's actually an album called Museum.
Yep.
And in 2013, I'm kind of restarting my solo career after just have had, a run with Tramp's White Lion and some other stuff. I'm restarting and I'm going back the first, which is basically real solo album number 4,
Right.
Cobblestone Street, which is
Yep.
my Harvest, which is my Atlantic City.
It is.
I know. I'm comparing it to Giants. And then after that, then I do the Museum album, and it's still just an album that's only me and my co-producer Soren Anderson that's doing that. Nobody else is appearing on the album, and there are just songs that I have never done before, kind of stuff that I go far out and explore, because after Museum, when I come back with am I gonna say Nomad?
Actually, I've written down because I'm horrible at remembering things. I remember the worst one. The worst one actually. You see, yeah, Nomad came out. Yeah, Nomad was your next one.
Yeah, exactly. So that then I'm back to now doing what I did on Capricorn, recovering the
Right.
wasted years, Mortal Life. Than this. It's a full band album. Here we're back: piano, Hammond B3, two guitars, drums. So now I'm into structure in the little song, but there are some songs on the Museum album that is really really experiment where I'm experimenting and
Hmm.
things like that. That I really enjoy going back to because it's like, wow, I really went out there, but it's still Mike Tramp, of course, I
Right.
still trust in yourself and things like that. But it's listening back to it, it surprises me every single time.
Well, the museum thing obviously was in the back of my mind because I do like the album too, and that's why I the little tie in there. But it's exciting. I think you can tell as an artist to be fresh and exciting to see your excitement of writing something new and different is kind of the goal of being a musician. And if you're a fan of the musician, you want to support what they do. Like there's a lot of bands I like that have done some albums that I may not listen to, but I support them doing that album. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Because they need it as an artist. Um, I'm not
without a
going to throw any
doubt.
names out there, but it doesn't matter. I'd rather have them do whatever they want and fail than do the second album of something else again because people want it. You know, I mean, these albums are all stellar and they're all different. All your albums are different. I want people.
I have always, and I'm sure somebody else might have used the same kind of like a terminology, a metaphor. Each of my album is an exit on the highway. It's a symbol like there, and this is where I pull off, and I look back at where I've been, what I've seen, what I've done. It's mistakes, is success, etc., etc. And then this is now where the next gets created before I pull back down on the highway, and then the highway becomes the next journey. And when I pull off again, so each album has been sort of like uh, a kind of like an expression of what I've just done.
Well, they're like little journeys, and I think what's great is 'cause you've done, and this is a good time for you right now because you actually just released an album in 2022. It was actually a non-English album, which it's a beautiful album. But a lot of your stuff is being re-put out past couple years, the greatest hits, Trapology, like everything's out there. You have so much stuff going out there right now. So it's really exciting as a fan because there's once you put more stuff out there, it's easier for us to hear streaming or buy. And that's the thing. So April 14th, I want to say people get the album. It's fantastic. I love it. And you can get it in vinyl in the end of August, right? Like so
Yeah.
that's my
It's
push for the album.
actually, it's actually my first album that's not been released on vinyl at the same time. Don't
Really? Is it because of the delay with vinyl right now?
I don't know. It's the first time that I'm a little bit not that involved. All my solo albums, I am hands on with every single thing.
Yeah.
That's why every solo album's been released unlimited, colored vinyl and stuff like that because I've just taken different pride in that.
Hmm. No pun intended. It's a pride joke there. I want to thank you. So actually, one unrelated question is what gauge string are you using on your Telecaster when you play?
Interesting enough, on my acoustic, I use 12 to 54.
Okay.
And on my Telecasters, I use 13 to 56. That's a Malcolm Young kind of thing because I only play open chords.
Right.
So that's with a wound G, and they just, I mean, I think some of my Telecasters on the where on the walls here,
Yeah.
they're still ringing from the last tour. That's how thick the strings are.
I it's surprising how thick and how light some people's strings are. Like, and I love asking that of a musician. Like you'll have like a Van Halen or ZZ Top have the lightest strings, but then you talk to like John Parr, you know, he'll have the thickest. It's like the thicker strings. Like it's always
Yeah, I
crazy.
mean,
Like it doesn't make sense.
I mean, the thing is that I've been fortunate enough to meet Eddie many times, and he acknowledged me, and we have talked many times, and I've also been fortunate enough to tour with CC Top and become real good friends with Billy Gibbons. How those two guitar players play with those thin strings and get that tone out of that,
Right?
I have no idea how that happens.
And but no one really talks about that besides like guitar geeks. When you start guitar geeking about it, like to me, they're like, oh, Van Halen and all these things. I mean, yeah, he does those fantastic stuff. It's like whatever. And ZZ Top, these great songs. But I'm like, have you heard how fat that sound is? Do you know how hard it is to be playing that with these thin strings? It's like spaghetti. It's like it's insane to
It's
do that.
insane. It's
It really
completely,
is.
you know, it's out of this world. Which it also, of course, really debunk a lot of things about how you get fat sound. Everybody think you turn up the bit. I mean, it really proves. I mean, of course, it has proven with all the great guitar players, and you even mentioned Vito. Uh, there was an episode in 1991 where we were rehearsing right next to Van Halen in Los Angeles. And Vito was always wondering if, and he never really got to speak to Eddie. But then one day Eddie came into the room and he picks Vito's Strat up, and Vito's playing through Carvin, like an 88 preamp, a Carvin power amp, Carvin
Yeah.
cabinet.
Right.
And the second Eddie started playing, he sounded like Eddie.
I've heard that before.
It's as simple as that. And when Vito played, it sounded like Vito to a certain degree. It actually did not sound that much like Vito because it really wasn't a specific sound. But Eddie's sound is so much in his fingers. And
His
just like
fingers,
Billy,
yeah.
I've seen Billy Gibbons pick up my guitar. And I don't know what's going on.
It's inspiring and frustrating, right? You're like, ah,
they're beyond anything. They should not be cloned or compared. They're one of a kind.
and that's the thing. You don't also need to compare people because we already have Eddie Van. We have these people. You don't need to compare them. And like I said, people, listen, I love Vito, but I do want to focus on Vito because this is Mike Tramp. This is Mike Tramp. Is still doing albums. Has been doing really stand-up albums for a long time, and that's the important part. Okay, so if anybody gets anything from this, get the album. No New White Lion. Go back and listen to like all the solo albums. Is really where we need to go. You know, and of course the new songs of White Lion can be your gateway drug if you need to be. You know. And my favorite song is "Have You Ever." That's the other takeaway from me.
Well, I appreciate that, and obviously, I do hope that I somehow get another chance to sort of go out there and maybe tour with with the solo songs and stuff like that in that way, and not having to, because I heard you sort of mentioned my last album, which is all in my native tongue of Danish.
Yes, it's pretty.
Now that album is specifically for the country that I was born and raised in, and how I grew up, and there will be another album next year, and now with the Songs of White Line album, it's kind of like that. There's just a big wall that when I'm in that world, or when I'm on that side of that wall, and I do that, then that's there, and I don't bring anything from the other side of the wall in. So I want to separate, my Danish album, my White Lion thing, and my other solo albums. Those are actually three different things.
Yeah. They're all fantastic. They're all good. It's beautiful because lately I've listened to a lot of songs that aren't in English, and it's the opposite because America hears everything said in English and American.
Yeah,
so to hear other countries, you guys grow up hearing other countries, other languages. So I've really loved hearing other languages and just hearing the tone, the melody, how it goes through the music. It's a total different concept for me, not knowing the language.
Yeah, no, I sure. But also what I noticed, and there was actually, like, if somebody asked me, is there something you haven't done? Well, there was, but not now I have. And that's when I started writing the songs for the Danish album, which is all written on piano and Wurlitzer and Rhodes and stuff like that, because I didn't want it to be my solo album sung in Danish.
Right.
So I started, I sometimes as a songwriter, you start writing something that says, I can't put that on the album, but with that one, this is, we're in the studio, and we're talking about, we're mentioning the Bee Gees, we're mentioning, Marvin Gaye,
Yeah.
and we're there now creating just being a musical journey. That's over there, and then when I'm in, of course, when we're doing, the White Lion songs, well, I mean, it's rock and roll full. That's what we're doing in there. So everything has a place, and they will not be mixed.
It's fair. It's fair.
I hope that no. I hope when I go to America, nobody's gonna call out "Have you ever?"
I'm sorry. I apologize. Just go listen to it on there.
No, because it's always they will always call, and I go, well, where were you when I needed you?
I know. Well, it's hard. It was harder back then. You know what I mean? Because if you think about the timestamp of like just like you were growing, a lot of people rock and roll. A lot of us either went to school or college or jobs and had families and stuff. And a lot of people, the focus of music and the expendable money and time for concerts when you had little kids during that growth period for you was a little bit different. So you know what I mean? And now as we're all getting older again, our kids are older, get a little more money in our pockets to go to shows, can go back and appreciate it now. So I think there's that weird time span also that affected a lot of artists, just the
Yeah,
age
no,
gap.
you're 100% right. You're 100% right, man. It's just at least I can look over and I can see all these albums and I can listen to them. But of course, I mean, I would lie if I say I would have loved to go out on sort of like a big club stage or theater or something like that and perform my solo albums with a full band across America. I mean, that would probably be for me the ultimate dream.
I would think that would be awesome. I think it's deserved. You have the material, you got the skills. I mean, it's the time's in there. I mean, obviously, it's just about exposure and and selling it. I mean, and hopefully, maybe this album will reignite people's like, oh yeah, because let's face it, most people are like they're gonna hold you to one thing you did in your life, and God forbid you do anything else, and because that was the biggest thing you did that visually the world knew, they're gonna hold you to that. What else has he been doing? Well, maybe the people that don't know, like, what else have you been doing? Haven't been paying attention, are in the main commercial land, are gonna go, oh, White Lion, and they'll hear this and go, oh, it's a little different now. Oh, he has some solo stuff. Maybe he'll start to lead people back into this world of your solo stuff, and not
Yeah.
you as the band, but you as a solo artist.
You got that right. You
I
got
hope
that right.
so. I
Yeah.
hope so. I'd love to see you do some solo stuff. I mean, I'm gonna try seeing you guys when you come over here. But
Yeah, no, I think we got a gig at Hartford. Yeah.
yeah, well, yeah, you're coming into New York, and it looks like that's when you're leaving in New York area too, right? Probably because that's where you're landing and leaving around that time.
Yeah, didn't you say you're in Connecticut?
Yeah, I am in Connecticut. Yep, right
I think
outside of
we're
Hartford.
I think we're doing one show in Hartford.
Well, I will be there.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I'll have to check it out. I know I didn't see that in there, but I will check and maybe it's changed or updated, and that would be awesome.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, no, pretty soon I'll post the final dates. There's always when you tour on this level, dates are getting thrown left and right, and there's always something that gets changed or something else.
I know that actually I'm going to take it extra, but I'm sorry. People that are watching that don't always watch my show, for a band to come over, it costs a chunk of change out of their pocket just for the visa, and then the merch gets taxed, like it's like a double, triple tax. It costs a lot of money for an artist to come over, and that's why I don't do these big tours, especially coming over from Europe. So when Mike's here, it's already come out of pocket to be here to play these smaller shows. Go to the shows, buy his merch. So you got to support him here because it costs a lot for the visa. It's thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars just to land here as an artist.
Well, yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, just everybody. Oh, come to my town. Come to Texas. I says, yeah. No, I'd love to go to Texas, and I've been to Texas many times. But you also know that Texas is twice the size of Denmark.
It's crazy.
And you still can only play 5 shows, and I can play 100 shows in Denmark.
And that's the thing. It's still you still have to make money. I mean, don't everybody that's check this out. Mike Tramp still has to like eat food and have insurance, and he has kids and a wife he has to take care of. He still has to do human things. So it can't be like out of pocket where he's just like in the negative. He's got to make money. So when he's there, and I'm gonna tell you, people, when they go to the club, the artist gets taxed from the club, loses a percentage of these expensive shirts. I'm the guy who always puts it out there. So if you see a Mike Tramp shirt for $30, he's already had to pay for the shirt to get put together for 10 or $15, whatever colors. Then he has to carry it all across with him, and then the small percentage there, he's going to lose another 30% because the club takes a piece out of that.
I know.
So it shrinks down. So I also encourage you, if you can buy merch from an artist, get it directly from them because it's going to give them the most money. And see him. Don't complain why they don't come over. If he's here, you go see him.
Yeah,
You know.
we're sort of like the panda. There's not a lot of us left.
Well, it's just important to say because I don't think people look at it that way. When an artist, I'll get them next time, or why don't they come around more? It's not about that. It's about money, and we all pay our bills, so we know about money. There's no excuse.
We all do. We all do.
So, Mike, I want to thank you for coming on today. I appreciate
Yeah,
it. I'm a
my
big
pleasure.
fan.
My
Thank you very
pleasure.
much. I will.